Hi, everyone. This is March of 2019. This is the Coffee with the Geek Show. My name is Andy Wheelock, and with me today is a fantastic guest, as always, and it is the Tech Rabbi Michael Cohen. And Michael, just to read off some of his bulleted points from his website, he's a designer, educator, and I love this one, creativity instigator. And his mission is to help educators around the world to reveal their own creative abilities. And I'll stop there because I know there's so much more to that, but I love that notion. And I think that's part of the creativity instigator. He is the author of a recent book, Educated by Design, which outlines his principles for revealing and nurturing our innate creative courage and capacity. And sorry for the dog barking in the background. And we'll talk about your book, and you're a keynote speaker. You have been advisor and trainer, and if that's not enough, you are also the director of innovation for Yeshiva University of Los Angeles Boys School and the creator of the Schlesinger STEAM and Entrepreneurship Center. So, wow, that's a lot, Michael. I don't know when you sleep, but thank you for joining me today.
And super excited to be here.
We will start off with the easiest question of the session is, what's your favorite coffee blend, since this is the Coffee with the Geeks show?
Right. So I came prepared, and I'm really into Pete's House blend. It's a dark roast. It's simple, nothing too crazy. I was at Coffee Bean a couple of days ago, and I saw this reserve series of blends, like from Jamaica and Kona and in Hawaii, and I was like almost intrigued to spend $30 on a pound of coffee, and then went back to my roots.
Well, it sounds delicious. So, Michael, where I saw you or came upon you first was at last year's ISTE, and you were one of the kind of TED Talk speakers, and you talked about a lot of your kind of principles of design and encouraging creativity. Can you tell me, first of all, or maybe give us some background about that speech? I know you can see it on your websites if people want to go back and see it. It's a great presentation. You did a really good job with it. But can you talk about the TED Talk presentation? And that was a big room full of a lot of educators. It must have been kind of intense pressure-wise. But can you talk about that experience? And then we'll kind of transition into your ISTE experience for this year.
Right. So the talk itself was really an evolution of how I needed to look at the way that I problem solve and apply creativity, how I do it in my own professional capacities before I was in education, as an educator, as an administrator. And along this journey, hearing comments here and there of like, wow, like, how did you think of that? Or, oh, I never looked at it that way. Those types of comments. And I realized that many times people just don't know what to look for and where to look for it, and maybe even when to look for it as they look to solve problems. And I wanted to really map out the journey that you could take to reveal your own creative potential, because I really believe that we all have it. And the talk was an interesting one. When the joke with the rabbinic school is, they teach you to talk at length. An hour-long talk is, that's the minimum, right? So for me to speak for 18 minutes was incredibly difficult. And I've done Ignite talks before, which are 5 minutes. And there's something about this 18 minutes that can be incredibly magical and engaging, but incredibly challenging to put together the talk. But because my whole mission is to provide value for my students and my direct colleagues and colleagues the world over through social media, there's nothing that's really stopping me from sharing that message. So when you say, oh, the crowd was big, first thing is that the lights were dim. So I think I only saw the first 1,000 people. And after that, it was just sort of like, I knew they were there, but the room was quite dark. And because I'm telling a story, and because I'm hoping that the story comes from my heart, it's just a calm flow. And I wasn't nervous. I wasn't worried. I didn't design a talk that required me to recall statistics or research. It was really just this is what's important, and this is what's happening, and this is what could happen. And I took a lot from the TED. The TED has a curriculum. Actually, I have an app right now called Master, like a master class app, I think is what it's called. And this app breaks down the process of really building a very strong storytelling and communication capacity. And I saw a TED talk from Nancy Duarte on how to give an incredible talk, an incredible speech. And she compared Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech to Steve Jobs introducing the iPhone. And the reason that she chose those two talks, I think, is just because how could you compare those two? They seem so different in the drive and reason behind the speech and the outcomes. But what she wanted to show was every powerful speech requires you to travel your audience from a what is, what could be, what is, what could be. And I think it worked. People were pretty into it. I was really super grateful that I had the experience and the opportunity to share my story and my work. And that kind of experience was just pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm working through that master class now, and it really does kind of refine your ideas, and it makes you learn something about yourself too. And maybe this is just me personally. I never thought I had something to really say. Like, what do I have to say to thousands of people? Did you find that, or was it something that you really have a vision of what you want to say?
I think we all have something to say. We all have a value to provide, each one of us. And this comes from my spiritual approach to life as the rabbi part of the Tech Rabbi, that each one of us has a unique role to fulfill in this world, and not one person can fulfill the role of another. And if we could get our students to really understand and internalize that from a very young age, we would have a lot more people trying to provide value in the world. But because there is a fear, and I'm sure we'll get into this during the conversation, there is a fear of a lot of different variables. So we doubt that we have something to contribute, but we all have a story to tell. And once you believe that you have that story to tell, and you learn how to craft that story, you can do great things with it. Because what I find, and I find this to this day, I did a workshop series. This was the third workshop in a series of 4 this past Monday. And I was really doubting myself in this workshop. And I realized this is just common knowledge for me. And so I don't have to be excited about the content as much as I can be excited about knowing that it will also provide value for someone that this is new for. And that I think is one of the big obstacles for us, is that we think that our common knowledge and skills are not valuable to others, but people that lack that skill or that knowledge, it can be incredibly eye-opening for them if they feel that has a value for them.
I like that. And wow, there is a huge gap between Steve Jobs and Martin Luther King. Interesting. Can you just talk about what your ISTE experience is going to be like this year? You got some good sessions.
Yeah, I'm excited. This year, I am on a panel about sketchnoting with some super incredible, major sketchnoters. I'll just read off the list here, because this is I'm just one of really some just absolutely incredible sketchnoters. So we have Wanda Terrell is the organizer of it. She's an incredible sketchnoter. She's got Sylvia Duckworth on there, a couple other educators, Nicole Carter, Ann Cosma, Beth Madus. Ooh, I'm gonna totally ruin this name here. Beth Matusewicz. I think I did well there. Valerie Rodriguez, Kate Tolnai, and myself. And it's a really great group because it's such a diverse group that I think will show educators that sketchnoting has a place in every subject, every skill level, every frequency of use of this process. I have a session That's just my own interactive lecture on how design thinking can really build and create a community and cultural impact at schools. And I think that that's important to look at school as a community and how design thinking can really improve that community. And then I'll be doing some things with Apple around the everyone can create curriculum, which I've shared at a number of conferences this year, and I'm in love with the hands-on experiences of educators using Keynote as a full animation suite where they thought that it was just like the Mac version of PowerPoint.
Wow. So it sounds like you're going to be pretty busy, which is nice skate or nice skate. Sorry, that's our local affiliate. ISTE is just always jam packed full of stuff, but it sounds like you're going to be doing a lot of creative stuff. And thinking of sketchnoting, you know, it's kind of something I talk about quite a few times is that, we often kind of forget the arts. And I know we're trying to bring it back in with, STEAM and that sort of thing, but we forget kind of, tapping into drawing, but also, the other one that we kind of forget is tapping into music. And, what are your thoughts on bringing music into classrooms as well?
One of the things that I don't think that STEAM does well is that STEAM is saying that art is only valid because it's now part of things that we think are important. So I'm not so thrilled with this with STEAM as let's include the arts now for this thing. Arts stands alone in of itself, and there are incredible articles now coming out. There's one recently on Business Insider that drawing creates such a strong imprint on memory that if you would sketch information, you would retain that information and recall it in a much stronger way. And so what we have to do is we have to stop associating art with painting the Mona Lisa or drawing a hyper realistic drawing that you can barely tell the difference between the photo, or the real subject and the drawing, and really just looking at it as mark making and as a way to visualize information. The same with music. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, and this happens to all of us, you hear a song that you haven't heard in a decade. It's not even you don't even think about the song, but you hear it and all of a sudden the lyrics come back and you are singing along. That has to take on a role in education in some capacity. And there's some interesting tech companies doing it, but it doesn't have to be that sophisticated. Using music to engage your students, to show them that music, which is something that's important to all people, right? All cultures value music as a way of promoting their culture, promoting their community, promoting their connections. So utilizing that medium to engage students. I put song to information, and I can recall that information in a much more profound way. So I'm a big pro of it. I went to art school, for all those listeners that are wondering, like, what is my expertise in art? So I did my undergrad in printmaking and design. So I was almost going to be a famous artist. I was really close. I had some pretty successful New York art shows. I just couldn't handle the intensity of making it work and making a living with some little children that were under my my own children and under my guidance, that apparently I have to feed them and clothe them and do all these things. So it didn't work out quite the way that I imagined, but it was for a bigger purpose of getting into education. So it had to happen that way.
So let's talk about your book, because I think that'll probably incorporate a lot of the elements of things that we've already talked about. So I guess maybe talk about the book as far as just, what goes into writing a book about ed tech and creativity and design. And then maybe just, what are some things that we can pull from the book without giving it all away, because we want people to pick up a copy.
Yeah. You have to look at what's missing in the world if you want to write a book. And that doesn't mean that the content doesn't exist. And I'm pretty clear in my book that there's a lot of my own creation, but there's a lot of curation and synthesis that's found in the book. But you have to feel that you're providing something of value for someone very specific. You literally have to close your eyes and imagine that person and their struggles, their interests, their activities, what they do, and that's who you have to write the book for. And if it happens to be that other people enjoy the book as well, that's great. But you have to have that. I submitted a manuscript to Dave Burgess 2 years ago. January, it was 2 years ago. And it was a sort of this edtech vision book. And he rejected the manuscript. Said incredible content, but we don't publish expert ideas. We publish manifestos. And if I could remove your name and put another name of another edtech expert, you wouldn't know. Like, oh wait, that's Michael Cohen. That's the Tech Rabbi's content. So I went back to the drawing board. I literally bought a book, How to Write a Book, because I felt pretty defeated. And I realized that it's not really just about tech. It's about the way in which I see education as a journey of developing really strong and resilient problem solvers, and what skills and knowledge and experiences do you need to have to be able to enter into any industry, any job, and be ready to not just perform tasks, but really provide a unique value to whatever company you work for. And I realized, oh wait, this book is something much bigger. And so I started to really document the areas that I feel I'm successful and areas that I struggle in. And I put together 10 principles for creativity that are, and for those that are watching the video, here's the cover. And it really just focuses on this journey. What does the mindset look like? How do you need to think about creativity and really understand what it is? Because it's not art, it's not music. Those are expressions of creativity. Creativity is a way of thinking and looking at the world and identifying opportunities. And that could translate into painting. That could translate into culinary arts. That could translate into a number of things. Once you understand that it's that way of looking, the big obstacle for everybody, and the reason that it's the second principle is because if you cannot understand the role of failure, you are just never going to start. You're never going to risk. You're never going to do. It's that notion that if I fail, I am a failure, and this failure represents me. And since I don't want to be publicly viewed as a failure, I can't do anything risky. And the reason that most people think like this is because this is how school is designed, right? Do the work, and you need to receive A. You need to receive a grade of excellence and perfection. And if you receive anything less than that, you have failed. But in the real world, you never have to get things 100% right. If you get something 80% correct, like that still ships. Look at the software that we're using right now on our computers and our smartphones. It's version 10 dot, or 12 dot, whatever it is, dot. There's 5 sub levels of it, because if it's not perfect, we learn and we evolve it and we fix it. So this failure piece, and failure as part of a journey and not a destination. I have an acronym that I evolved from the very famous one, FAIL, first attempt in learning. And I saw that the word failure is actually the full scope of it, which is first attempt in learning. And then the URE is unless reflection exists. So we need to build in this reflective practice in our classroom. Then I'll just run through the others, because I know we have some other cool conversations to be had through the questions that you are going to share with me. And it's basically empathy and ideation. How do you understand the needs of others and put yourself in the shoes of others and problem solve from their perspective? How do you ideate? How do you use technology? How do you act instead of waiting for this false or mythical permission to be granted? How do you make the experiences to develop all of these hands-on? And then how do you put your soul into it and stay humble? I think humility is a big piece of it. And if we lack humility, then we lack the ability to grow and improve. We lack the ability to involve others who might feel less than us or might feel intimidated because we are so successful. And I think it's really important that we bring that back into our methodology of teaching. That humility is a core principle of what we're trying to do as we as educators are stakeholders in raising these young people.
From the first part of your answer, I kind of heard mastery learning. Do you feel mastery learning is maybe a better approach rather than this is what you got and let's move on?
Yeah, absolutely. It just, if you look at any industry in the world that exists does not require 100% to be deemed a success. That's just the bottom line. And I think that mastery-based learning helps our students see that there's progress and there's more growth that needs to be done, but it doesn't have to happen in this compartmentalized scope of like, okay, we're learning integers right now in math, or we're learning grammatical structure in English, and we're going to learn this right now, we're going to get graded on it, and you might never need it again. It might never be on a test again, ever. Like, well, for what? So I think it's important for our students to understand that there's growth, and there's also acknowledging where there's a lack of growth, but it gives it a context that you're really strong in this area, you're a little bit weak here, but overall you're strong, versus you're a D here, you're a C here. And then they look at the D's and they're like, well, why am I, this is who I am, I'm a D.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I've always, when I started off my career some 20 some years ago, mastery learning was making its way into the schools, and people thought mastery learning was everybody gets an A, nobody, and that was its, dooming, I guess, element, because everyone perceived that. That's not what it is, but parents perceived it, and so then, and again, driven by this is the way we've always done it. Let's go back to A, B, C, and D. But I do hope and pray that mastery learning comes back, and we start coming back to it, and reframe it, maybe, so we don't have those hurdles. But let me come back to something you were talking, and you're very, I think, thoughtful in your presentation when I saw you at ISTE, and the questions I've answered today. And I'm going to kind of jump ahead to one of the questions. So you're a tech person and you're a rabbi. Can you talk a little bit about the blend of being a tech leader on one hand, and also being a spiritual and religious leader on the other? How do those blend? Do they conflict? Are they synchronous? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my approach to the world is that everything in the world contains the potential for good and the potential for bad. And sometimes what we do with technology is, because it is in its current state so open-ended and so versatile, we tend to look at the bad. There's evil people, there's evil content, there's ways in which this device can be addictive and destructive and be an obstacle to complete important things. So we could focus on that. Right now, there's an article that there's California legislation to ban cell phones in schools. And I'm having this weird Groundhog Day moment where I feel like I'm back in 2015 or 2012. And we're still having these conversations, that we're talking about equity in education, and that we need to provide all students with access to the internet and to tools. And because we aren't willing to invest, or because districts cannot afford to invest in high quality technology, we're choosing technology that might not be the best, but the most affordable. Meanwhile, nearly every single student in the state of California has a cell phone. That's just the fact. People today are more willing to go a little bit hungry and have a smartphone than to eat and be full. I mean, that is just I would say the statistics that I've seen, that even in developing and emerging countries where it's a question if running water and electricity are consistent, they have smartphones and they have access to. There's more smartphones, I think, on planet Earth than people. I think it's like 5 devices for everyone, but I don't want to digress too much. So there is this potential for bad. But there is the potential for so much good. And the fact that I'm even sitting here having a conversation with you is evidence that I live in a area in West Los Angeles, 2 square miles. Every restaurant, every grocery store, every synagogue, every school, for the most part, is in this 2 square mile block. My parents, my family house, everything is there. I could have just done my thing as an edtech director at a K-8 Jewish day school and just did my thing and did good work and just moved on with my day. But instead, I saw the power in social media to connect and learn from people, to connect and hopefully inspire and teach people. But there is so much potential as far as learning. Right now, I want to build up my entrepreneurship skills so I can take an online course from Harvard. I want to build up my finance skills. I can take an online course for free on edX from MIT. I want to learn about wine making. I can take a course for free. I can look up YouTube and teach my child how to tie his shoe from a video that's been viewed 1 billion times. I'm able to share the learning that happens in my classroom that might help a teacher in Kansas City. We're living in one of the most incredible times in history where we are so empowered to use technology for good that it really doesn't matter what bad can be caused. And what we need to do in education is to really make an honest accounting and reflection on what activities and experiences are we providing our students and why are they disengaged? Why would they rather play Fortnite than sit through 6 hours of school? They do other things besides Fortnite at home. Like they do eat, maybe they eat and play Fortnite, but I just think that we when we look at the negative, the addiction, the improper use, we miss out on an opportunity. We get clouded. We need to look at what can you do with technology to provide good into the world. So I think for me as a rabbi and spiritually, it's, I want to do whatever I can to make people good, honest, and caring people. That's the main drive in my life. If I can use technology to reach more people, if I can use technology to connect people, if I can use technology to learn from people, so then it becomes it becomes a godly conduit of goodness.
That's awesome. And I think it's a great place to kind of pause and maybe go into, we'll just do a few of our quick short answer questions. We're coming down to the bottom of the hour, but that was really, a powerful statement. It really gave, I think all of your answers have given me a lot of food for thought. And it's, you've actually, you've boosted me in my TED masterclass to combine some ideas. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
All right. So we'll run through a couple of questions on the wheel of geekdom here. And again, these are meant to be kind of short answer, but if you want to expand upon them, we don't go too far. So the first question is, what's your favorite app?
My favorite app. That's a hard one.
It is, isn't it?
Honestly, it's probably the camera app. That's the bottom line. It's the app to capture my stories happening around me. I think it's definitely the most powerful app for me.
Yeah, that's a good one. And no one's ever said that before, but yeah, you're right. And think of how that interacts with so many other pieces, from Twitter to Instagram to, even Facebook. Pictures can be powerful, and, we can all be photographers, tell our
Yeah.
story that way. Okay, let me get to another one here. Next one is, what was your first storage device? Thumb drive, floppy disk?
My first storage device
Yeah,
was a Western Digital I think it was 80 gigs, which was like really cutting edge, super expensive for the time. It was 80 gigs and it didn't require a power supply. So it was like pretty revolutionary in its use. I
awesome.
mean, I guess technically like a floppy disk. I guess if I should be like super nerdy, like technically that was probably my first storage device, was the cardboard box filled with the 2.5 megabyte floppy disk drives. But like, I don't know. I guess I'll make that a two-part answer: real storage, or just like my nerd-esque, being a son of a father who was an early tech adopter. We had floppy disks everywhere.
Nice. Okay, and we'll end it on this. Do you have any whimsies? Do you like Star Wars, Star Trek, Harry Potter, any fantastical things you like to dig into? Art, literature, any of those things? Movies.
I mean, I think I'm a nerd for like really great design. So I'd say if I have like one guilty pleasure, it's scrolling the design hashtags on Instagram and just seeing like the fantastical imagination being expressed by these various designers. I think that would be like my major nerd caveat there.
I like it. And maybe you'll like this if you have Netflix. There was a series called Abstract. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But if you have Netflix, they basically, follow, designers, architects, car manufacturers, and explore, the people that are behind a lot of these awesome creations, even like Nike shoes, that sort of thing.
All right.
It was really fascinating. So, well, Rabbi Cohen, thank you so much for joining me. I am really looking forward to it. I'm still on the shelf with ISTE right now, but I'm really looking forward. I'll keep track of your work and following all the things you do, and get your book. And thank you so much. You're doing great stuff and really inspiring stuff. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right.